The hall was packed with cameras, reporters, and a tense silence. It wasn't every day that an African president and a former U.S. Attorney General stood on the same stage, under the sharp lights of an international legal forum. Pam Bondi adjusted her jacket, her smile sharp, almost mocking. She leaned toward the microphone with the confidence of someone who had spent years in American courtrooms, her voice crisp and cutting. "Without us," she declared, pausing to let the weight of her words sink into the crowd, "you have no law. No structure. No justice system that the world respects. Your courts exist because we trained them. Your constitutions hold meaning because we advised them. Without our guidance, chaos would reign." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Some nodded, others frowned. Bondi's words were bold, dismissive, crafted to sting. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, eyes narrowing toward the man sitting just across from her. Ibrahim Traoré, dressed in his military uniform, didn't move at first. His posture was steady, his gaze fixed forward, almost as if her words had passed through him without leaving a mark. But those who watched closely could see the tightening of his jaw, the flicker in his eyes. When he finally leaned toward his own microphone, the room shifted. His voice came low at first, then rose with power, carrying not just to the hall but to the millions who would later watch the broadcast online. "Then you never had justice," Traoré said firmly. The words cut through the air, sharp as a blade. "If justice only exists when it is given by you, then it was never real. It was a performance. Justice belongs to the people, it cannot be imported, bought, or handed down like a gift from above." The hall erupted in gasps and scattered applause. Bondi blinked, clearly not expecting such a direct blow. For the first time, her practiced smirk faltered. Traoré leaned back in his chair, his calm returning. But his words had already struck, echoing across the hall, "Then you never had justice." The moderator, sensing the rising tension, tried to move the discussion forward. "Thank you both for your opening remarks," he said, his voice unsteady. "Perhaps we can explore the broader question of international cooperation." But Pam Bondi wasn't finished. She leaned back in, her smirk returning. "Mr. Traoré, let's be honest. Without the framework provided by America and Europe, your so-called systems of law would crumble. Courts without international recognition are nothing more than village councils. Your rulings only matter because we acknowledge them. Strip away our validation, and what do you have? A nation shouting into the void." Her words struck like a whip, and the hall murmured again, this time louder, the tension snapping tighter. Ibrahim Traoré straightened in his seat, his eyes locking on Bondi. His voice, steady but firm, carried the weight of something deeper than politics. "You speak of recognition as if justice is a stamp from your offices in Washington. But let me ask you this, when your courts ignored the cries of the weak, was that justice? When your laws shielded the powerful and crushed the poor, was that law?" He leaned closer, his hand pressing firmly on the table. "Justice does not need your seal. It does not wait for your permission. Justice is born from truth, from fairness, from the will of the people. And if your definition of law requires us to bow to you, then what you call justice was nothing but control." The applause came stronger this time. Not polite clapping, but thunder that rolled through the chamber. Even some of the foreign delegates, who had remained silent, nodded slowly, their eyes fixed on Traoré. Pam's smile faltered again, her confidence shaken. For the first time, she realized this was not going to be the easy lecture she had planned. Traoré wasn't just answering her, he was exposing the hollowness of her claim, turning the spotlight back on those who had long declared themselves guardians of law. Pam Bondi shifted in her chair, visibly unsettled. But she wasn't ready to let go of the narrative. She leaned forward again, her tone sharper, her words aimed like darts. "Mr. Traoré," she said, "your speeches sound noble, but let's not pretend. Without Western oversight, African courts have been plagued with corruption, favoritism, and instability. You talk about justice, but what about the countless times justice has been denied in your own region? If you strip away the guidance of America and Europe, you don't get freedom, you get chaos. The audience grew quiet again, waiting for Traoré's response. Some thought Bondi had landed a critical blow. But the Burkinabe leader simply exhaled, steady, calm, his silence heavier than her accusations. When he finally spoke, his voice carried not just authority, but a piercing honesty. Chaos? Traoré repeated, his eyes narrowing. Chaos is when leaders in powerful nations invade others under the banner of law. Chaos is when corporations, shielded by foreign courts, rob entire continents of their resources. Chaos is when the rich write the rules, and the poor are left with scraps. Do not lecture us about chaos, you created it. He paused, scanning the hall. Cameras zoomed in on his face, capturing every word. If you call us lawless, then remember this, our people never chose your laws. They were imposed. True justice will not come from courts in Washington or Brussels, it will come from the soil, the voices, and the will of our people. The chamber shook with applause, louder this time, echoing like thunder. Delegates from Africa rose to their feet, clapping with force, while even some European representatives shifted uncomfortably. The balance in the room had shifted. Pam Bondi's smirk faltered completely now. She adjusted her notes, but her hands trembled slightly. The debate was no longer hers to control. Traoré had seized it, turning her own accusations into proof of everything he claimed. Pam Bondi tightened her lips, forcing her composure back into place. She knew the cameras were on her, and retreat was not an option. She flipped a page of her notes, her voice sharp again. You speak passionately, Mr. Traoré, she said, but passion doesn't build courts. Passion doesn't draft constitutions. And passion doesn't protect citizens from tyranny. Our institutions are the backbone of stability. Without American guidance, without Western frameworks, your so-called justice collapses into tribal rule and personal power. That's not law, that's survival. Her words echoed with an edge of superiority, as though she was lecturing a student. The moderator glanced nervously between them, but Traoré didn't flinch. He leaned forward, his eyes burning with conviction, and spoke slowly, each word like a hammer striking stone. You confuse justice with dominance, he said. You confuse law with chains. Our people have survived centuries of foreign interference disguised as border. Yet through every storm, every exploitation, they have endured. That endurance is not weakness, it is proof that true justice grows even under oppression. And when that justice rises, no empire can stop it. The hall went silent, every ear tuned to his words. Even journalists stopped typing for a moment. Traoré's voice carried not just a rebuttal, but a challenge, an indictment of centuries-old systems. He continued, his voice firm but calm, we are not children needing lectures. We are nations demanding respect. If you think our justice crumbles without you, then you never understood what justice was. Justice is not yours to grant, it belongs to the people. And we will never surrender it again. The chamber erupted, applause, cheers, even chants from some delegations. Bondi's face stiffened. For the first time, her confidence cracked fully, her rehearsed superiority replaced with visible frustration. This was no longer just a debate. It was a clash of worlds, and Traoré was winning. Pam Bondi clenched her jaw. She wasn't used to being on the defensive, especially not in front of an international audience. Her voice sharpened as she tried to regain control. Let's not pretend, Mr. Traoré, she said. You talk about justice as if it's something pure, untouched, holy. But your systems are fragile. Your nations look to us because we've built models that work. When disputes arise, you turn to our courts, our arbitration, our laws. Without our frameworks, your so-called justice is just an illusion, words without weight. The statement hung in the air, her tone dripping with condescension. Some in the audience nodded cautiously, but most waited, eyes locked on Traoré. They knew by now he would answer with fire. He leaned forward slowly, his voice calm, but each word carried thunder. Illusion? No, Madame Bondi. The illusion is yours. The illusion is that justice exists only in marble courthouses with your flags above them. The illusion is that without your signatures, truth disappears. But look closely, how many times has your justice failed your own people? How many innocent lives crushed while the powerful walked free? His hand tapped the table, emphasizing his next words. Justice is not a Western export. It is not your property to distribute or deny. It lives in the hearts of people. It is written in the soil, in the struggles, in the sacrifices of those who fought for freedom. That is justice. And no nation, not yours, not anyone's, has the right to claim ownership of it. The room erupted again, louder than before. The applause rolled like thunder, joined by voices shouting Traoré's name. Journalists scrambled to capture every word, every angle, knowing history was being made on that stage. Pam Bondi looked shaken. For the first time, she glanced down at her notes, her armor crumbling. Across from her, Ibrahim Traoré sat steady, unflinching, his words having turned the hall into his courtroom. This was no longer a debate, it was a trial. And Bondi's claim of authority was collapsing under the weight of truth. Pam Bondi's hands tightened on the edges of her notes. She could feel the tide of the room turning against her, but pride wouldn't allow her to back down. She straightened her shoulders and spoke louder, her tone carrying frustration disguised as authority. You criticize our courts, Mr. Traoré, but without them, international order would collapse. Trade disputes, human rights protections, security alliances, all of it depends on our legal frameworks. Without America and Europe, your nations would fall into silence. You need our rules to stand in the world. The words were heavy, and for a brief second, the hall stilled. It was her attempt to reclaim dominance, to remind the audience of Western power. But Traoré's eyes narrowed, his expression calm yet sharp. He waited for the murmurs to fade before answering. You call it order, he said, his voice deliberate, but whose order? An order that lets some invade others without consequence? An order where the wealthy nations bend the rules to their benefit, while the rest are told to obey? If that is your version of order, then it is nothing more than legalized injustice. He leaned forward, his presence filling the stage. True order cannot be built on double standards. True law does not serve the few at the expense of the many. And true justice will never survive if it depends on permission slips from those who profit from inequality. The room erupted again, this time with a roar of applause that drowned even the moderator's attempts to call for quiet. Delegates from across Africa stood, clapping fiercely, some raising their fists in solidarity. Even journalists from Europe and America exchanged uneasy glances, knowing the clips of this exchange would soon flood headlines worldwide. Pam Bondi's expression faltered once more, her smirk gone entirely. In her place was the tight, frustrated look of someone who realized her own argument had been dismantled. Traoré hadn't just defended his nation, he had exposed the imbalance of the global system itself. Pam Bondi's face was tense now. Her carefully rehearsed calm had cracked under the weight of the thunderous applause. Still, she forced a smile, though it looked more like a grimace. Mr. Traoré, she said sharply, you speak as though Africa can exist in isolation. But every treaty you sign, every trade route you use, every dollar in your reserves, all of it is tied to systems we created. You can give all the speeches you want, but the truth is simple, without us, you wouldn't survive in the global arena. Her voice carried arrogance, the kind of tone designed to corner an opponent. Some of the audience shifted uncomfortably, the words hitting more like a threat than a statement. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of tension on the stage. Traoré didn't rush his response. He looked straight at her, then at the audience, letting silence draw them closer. When he finally spoke, his words hit like steel. Survival? He asked. Our people survived centuries of chains. They survived when everything was stolen, land, resources, even names. And still, they rise. If survival depended on you, Madam Bondi, Africa would not exist today. But we are here. We are alive. We are unbroken. And that proves one thing: your system is not the source of our strength. Our people are. His voice rose, filled with conviction. We will not measure our future by the permission of those who exploited our past. We will not beg for a seat at your table, we are building our own. And when the day comes, you will see, justice cannot be contained within borders you drew. It belongs to the people who never stopped fighting for it. The applause shook the walls. Delegates stood once more, some clapping with tears in their eyes, others raising their voices in chants. The hall no longer felt like a courtroom where Traoré was on trial. Instead, it felt like a revolution, with him as its voice. Pam Bondi lowered her gaze, her words stripped of their power. Across from her, Traoré sat steady, his presence now undeniable. Pam Bondi tried to gather herself, but the storm of applause had left her rattled. She leaned closer to the microphone, her voice sharper now, almost desperate to reclaim authority. Mr. Traoré, she said, your words sound powerful, but power without structure is dangerous. Nations that reject the international order often descend into dictatorships and violence. What you call independence may look inspiring here, but without our guidance, it's a path straight into ruin. You cannot fight the world and expect to win. Her words were laced with both warning and threat. The audience murmured, some nodded uneasily, others frowned at her tone. For a moment, the hall felt tense again, as if Bondi's claim might restore her footing. Traoré leaned back, his expression calm, almost reflective, before answering. His voice carried the weight of history itself. Ruins, he repeated. Look around the world. Where did the ruins come from? Who armed dictators and called it stability? Who divided nations, drained their wealth, and then labeled them failed states? You speak of guidance, but your guidance led us into chains. And yet, despite it all, we stand. His eyes swept the chamber. We are not fighting the world, Madam Bondi, we are fighting for the world. For a world where justice is not a privilege granted by the powerful, but a right born in every human soul. If that makes you uneasy, it is because your power was never built on justice, it was built on fear. And fear has no future. The hall erupted again, louder than ever. Delegates from across continents rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even chanting Traoré's name. The moderator tried to calm the audience, but it was impossible, the momentum was his. Pam Bondi sat frozen, her face tight with frustration. She had tried every line of attack, every argument, and yet each one had been turned back against her. The contrast was stark, her voice sounded like control, Traoré's like liberation. The air inside the chamber was electric now, the applause refusing to die down. Pam Bondi shifted uncomfortably, realizing the momentum was far beyond her grasp. Still, she tried one final time, her tone edged with both warning and disdain. Mr. Traoré, she said, her voice cutting through the noise, grand speeches don't change reality. The world runs on power, not ideals. And power is still in the hands of nations like mine. You can rally applause in this hall, but when decisions are made, in the courts, in the banks, in the trade agreements, it will still be us who decide. That's the reality you can't escape. The room fell silent. It was her last card, the raw assertion of dominance. Cameras zoomed in on Traoré, waiting for his answer. He leaned forward, his eyes blazing, his voice steady yet unyielding. Reality, he said. The reality is this: your power lasts only as long as people believe in it. And today, before this world, we say we no longer believe. We will not let the hands that robbed us write our future. We will not let those who preach justice while practicing exploitation define justice for us. He rose from his chair, his presence towering over the stage. His final words cut through the hall like thunder. You claim to decide for us. But listen carefully, those days are over. The people have already decided. And no courtroom, no bank, no empire can silence that decision. The chamber erupted in an explosion of cheers, applause, and chants that shook the walls. Delegates stood, clapping until their hands reddened. Journalists rushed to capture the historic moment. Pam Bondi sat frozen, her expression unreadable, as the cameras captured the image of a leader who had not only defended his people but declared a turning point for them. The hall no longer belonged to her, it belonged to Ibrahim Traoré. The hall was still vibrating with the echo of applause when the moderator finally stood, struggling to restore calm. Cameras zoomed in on Traoré, his face illuminated by the lights, a symbol of defiance and dignity. Pam Bondi sat frozen, silent, the weight of his words still hanging heavy over her. Traoré raised his hand slightly, and the room quieted almost instantly. His voice carried not only strength but also a calm clarity, the kind that draws people in like gravity itself. Today, he began, you have all witnessed something greater than a debate. You have witnessed the truth breaking through centuries of noise. They say law is theirs. They say justice is theirs. But look around you, justice belongs to no empire. Justice belongs to the people who demand it, who live it, who fight for it. He paused, his eyes scanning the audience. Delegates, diplomats, journalists, ordinary citizens watching through cameras across the globe. Our message is simple: no nation, no leader, no courtroom across the seas will dictate our worth. Africa does not need permission to stand. And when we rise not in silence but with a voice that the world cannot ignore. A ripple moved through the audience, then another, until the hall exploded into a standing ovation. Some delegates had tears in their eyes, others raised their fists high. The sound was deafening, yet unified, a chorus of defiance and solidarity. Traoré leaned back slightly, his closing words ringing like a verdict. If you claim to carry justice, then prove it by respecting ours. If not, know this, justice will live on without you, stronger than before. The cameras captured the moment, Bondi silent, Traoré unshaken, and the world watching. Headlines would explode within hours, but for those inside the chamber, the outcome was already clear. This wasn't just the end of a debate. It was the beginning of a shift, an unmistakable declaration that Africa's voice had claimed its place on the global stage. Today was not just a debate, it was a revelation. They told us justice belongs only to those who hold power, but we showed the world that justice belongs to the people. They mocked our independence, questioned our strength, and dismissed our dignity. But tonight, here, before the eyes of nations, we proved that Africa stands not in the shadow of others, but in the light of its own resolve. To those who think our survival depends on their permission, look closely. We are not begging for space at your table. We are building our own, and it is stronger because it was built with the hands of those who refuse to bow. This is our message to the world: Africa does not need guardians. We do not need chains disguised as laws. We will rise on our own terms, and when we rise, it will not be in silence, it will be with a voice too powerful to ignore. So, let history write this moment clearly: no empire grants U.S. justice, no outsider defines our freedom. Justice is ours, freedom is ours, and the future belongs to those who dare to claim it. And we have claimed it, fully, fearlessly, and forever.